really increase that role? And are those black folks who say, well, you should have did this and you could have done that, will they be okay when the reaction to that social, and that's my projection, that that there possibly be a reaction to that social unrest because of this, what these budgetary shortages will prevent would put in place. And I think it's going to be a large population that is going to be affected amongst black folks. But I hear it's a population amongst black folks who's saying, well, yeah, get rid of them, lock them up, or detain them, or send them to another country if they do a criminal offense, which is considered, especially a federal offense, would be considered the opportunity to be able to do, because they're not citizens, so they can be able to be sent to a prison in another country. And then we're talking about citizens. We're not talking about immigrants or illegals. We're talking about black folks who are, citizens, and their families have been citizens, but that will get caught up because of the lack of social safety nets that are in place.
That means blacks doing bad like that. Yeah, blacks are doing bad, but shit, not like in the 90s, not like I remember. On the surge, I see a lot of young black entrepreneurs. That's what the problem is. They went off into another tax bracket, and a lot of people haven't caught up to realize that. We're not in the food stamp. That was 1980s and 90s talk. That's all. That's the shit we was crying about back then. Oh, they're gonna cut the damn food stamps. Oh, Lordy, Lord. These kids is on YouTube, getting that YouTube money. They getting that TikTok money. They're getting that editing money. They got their editing businesses. They got all the components that are in the factory that are attached, to these things are all companies that people, have. So this is the trend that I see. They're already in that little bracket to where they can write off and benefit. These rappers and all these guys. I don't know, man. I don't see it as the future being as people make it for black people. I really believe in the youth and stuff. That was a cat from my motherfucking generation crying and whining. Whoa, it's me, oh Lordy, Lord. But I don't hear that from the young generation like shit. Nigga, we get to that bag. We know how to do it. We got the avenue. We got the computers. We got AIs and all these automated ways to write books now. That we ain't gotta indulge anything manually. We can buy things done at the pace of one person in the 90s type of stuff. Anyway, how about Mike?
And for me, engaged in that, the thought I have, and you may be true, that's why I'm always kind of asking asking myself for the demographics, right? What is that number of that population that you speak of compared to the number of the population that I'm speaking of? Because I think that's important, and us, bolstering our view, whether it's the glass is half empty or the glass is half full, but as a reactionary, as a thought, I would say that, looking at the moment, that recent 5-year moment during COVID, a lot of young parents, just using young parents, ain't even dealing with the elderly, and again, I would be open to hearing what that number is, and I've seen it, but I don't have it in my consciousness now. A lot of them didn't have internet, didn't have computers, and that's why. So when the schools shut down, they had a couple of ways, to be able to service them. Right. So that's a population. Now, how big that population is compared to that population that doesn't have internet.
I appreciate it. Happy July 4th, guys. Thank you guys for bringing me out. I miss you guys. I'm with myself. But continue, Richard.
that does have cell phones, that does have the knowledge, because of their time experience to learn how to do the editing, that does have the ability to create content with the new technology, even the new technology that is coming in play now, Chat GPT and all that other stuff. It'd be interesting to know how large amongst the Black population, particularly, right? That population is. On the other side, it would be interesting, based off of this budget, how large of the population, the Black elderly population, I say elderly, even those who are retired. I know someone who, whether it's their fault or not, that had worked 45 years in the government, right? Had no aspiration of moving, but they've been consistent to work, and has retired now. Didn't take advantage of none of those other things, and you can say that that person, was foolish, whatever, for whatever reason, right? But now, after 45 years of consistent work, so you can't say that they didn't work, right? After 45 years of being able in a system that they, obviously maintained and paid taxes, that now their pension, as it would be, is somewhere like $30,000. So they don't work 45 years. Their now pension they're going to live off of is 30,000, and in the area that they live, the median income, right, is 54,000, and the average Black person in that area is living off of 32,000, right? So it's and that's not even dealing with healthcare. So it's that population, that I'm looking at, and that might be, in the 90s, that might have been different. And in the 90s, you had the, other, federal and financial catastrophes that were going on, and the social thing when talking about drugs and that proliferation and the effect it has had on families, and destabilizing, to where probably they just getting their foot, the two generations just getting a footing based off of the destabilization, of that period of the 90s, right? So it's that population, so when you raise your response in the relationship to glass being half full, it'd be interesting to know what's the numbers that are actually able to take advantage. And based off, I'm gonna say anecdotal, I would say that's probably like 20% of the population, because it's like 50% of the population, and my anecdotal, a little over 50% of the population is living below the poverty line, and that poverty line being 54,000, somewhere around that, in particular area. In general, income, I should say, medium income line, to be, for those who would challenge poverty line, the medium income line being around 54,000. 54% of the population live below that. So, and this budget will have an impact on that population.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for some commentary, because I haven't studied the big bill. I'm just a nigga that turned on talk radio and listened to the bullet points.
And the expansion of the work mandate in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, the formal name for food stamps. Parents of children ages 14 and up are among those who would have to work, volunteer, take classes, or participate